I was delighted to be offered the opportunity to speak to you about the tropical agenda, as we call it, and the state of the tropics more broadly. Unfortunately, I'm not able to be with you in person today, but I applaud the Institute of Chartered Foresters for making the UK's role in global forestry the focus of this year's conference. It is vital that organisations such as yours recognise the important role you can play far beyond your own shores. More than 2,000 years ago, philosopher Aristotle proposed that the world consisted of three zones: the frigid zone, the temperate zone, and the torrid zone. His theory was that the only place suitable for human civilization was the temperate zone. But right now, in 2019, more than 3 billion people live in Aristotle's torrid zone in the tropics. It is this region that I will focus on today.
The tropics is a place of extraordinary biological and cultural diversity. Some 80% of land biodiversity and almost all of the world's coral reefs and mangrove forests are tropical. Most of the world's remaining primary forests are found in tropical Africa, Asia, and South America, and provide essential services both locally and globally. Most of the world's living languages are spoken in the tropics. There are more than 1,000 languages spoken throughout Melanesia, 2,000 across Africa, compared with just 200 in Europe. The tropics has its challenges, for a variety of reasons, both imposed from the outside and born from within. The tropics have lagged behind the rest of the world from a development perspective. The legacy of colonialism looms large. This makes the tropics more vulnerable to the world's grand challenges than other regions. Rapid population and economic growth mean that the tropics is a region whose influence is set to rise dramatically in coming decades. The trajectory of the tropics and its effects, including approaches to sustainable forestry, land degradation, water stress, urban development, health, climate change, and other environmental pressures, will have global consequences. The State of the Tropics project has brought together key research institutions across the tropics to answer a nominally simple question: is life in the tropics getting better? The landmark State of the Tropics 2014 report, which will be updated in 2020, recognizes shared connections and issues, while acknowledging variable responses between regions and demonstrating that the region has made extraordinary progress in recent decades.
The good news is life is improving on several fronts. However, the region is at a critical juncture. The infrastructure and resources required to sustain larger populations and economic growth are putting significant and increasing pressure on the environment. This video will provide an update on the critical issues facing the tropics in pursuit of a prosperous and sustainable future worldwide.
The demographics of the tropics are diverse and ever-changing, currently home to 42% of the world's population, exceeding 3 billion people in 2017. This is an increase of more than 2 billion people since 1950, and an average annual growth rate of well over 2%, higher than the global average. The population of the tropics is expected to exceed the rest of the world within the next 2 decades. Although population growth rates remain higher in the tropics than the rest of the world, population growth has actually been slowing, mostly due to declining fertility rates across the region. Fertility has declined across all tropical regions, including those with the most population growth. In 1950, a woman in the tropics could be expected to give birth to around 6 children in her lifetime. By 2015, that number had almost halved to 3.1. Fertility rates tend to decline with growing affluence and greater access to education, particularly for women. The communities of the tropics have made extraordinary progress. Economies are growing, people are living longer than ever, and some previously debilitating diseases have all but been eradicated. Life expectancy at birth in the tropics increased by more than 25 years between 1950 and 2015 to 67.2 years. Child and maternal mortality has declined dramatically, as has the incidence of infectious diseases such as malaria, HIV, and tuberculosis. Children are staying in school longer, demonstrated by improved literacy rates, and more girls are finishing high school than ever before. Economic growth, urbanization, and better education outcomes have fostered a decline in extreme poverty across the tropics. Since 1990, the proportion of people living in extreme poverty has declined from 44% to less than 25%. Nonetheless, this still reflects a population of almost 700 million people living in extreme poverty. The gains of recent decades in the tropics should be celebrated. However, this should not deflect from the challenge that remains. For the first time in several decades, undernourishment in the tropics has increased. In 2017, 821 million people were considered undernourished globally, an increase of 15 million people since 2016. Most of this increase was in the tropics. Increases in undernourishment in Central and Southern Africa, when combined with rapid population growth, reflect factors such as drought, conflict, rising food prices, and slowing economic growth. In Northern Africa and the Middle East, rising undernourishment is caused by ongoing conflict in several nations, particularly Yemen. In South Asia and Southeast Asia, adverse climatic conditions, including drought and floods, are believed to be responsible for recent increases in food insecurity and undernourishment. Dry conditions in some regions and floods in others, associated with El Niño, affected cereal production in Thailand, Myanmar, and Timor-Leste between 2014 and 2015. Although topography and other factors contribute to local climatic variation, tropical regions are typically warm and experience little seasonal change in daily temperatures. Near the equator, the difference in mean temperatures between the warmest and coldest months is rarely more than 4 degrees Celsius, and at some locations such as Quito, Ecuador, it is less than 1 degree Celsius. Temperature ranges become larger as one moves further from the equator. But even at the limits of the tropics, few locations have an annual range of more than 15 degrees. The climatic conditions of the tropics have supported the development of the most diverse ecosystems found on Earth, including tropical rainforests and coral reefs. Many species in the tropics are specialized to deal with a narrow range of environmental conditions and have small home ranges. Thus, only small changes in temperature, rainfall, and land use can have catastrophic effects. In Northern Australia this year, the Bramble Cay melomys was officially declared extinct, believed to be the first official mammal extinction due to the impacts of climate change. Across the tropics, of those assessed by the IUCN, more species are threatened in the tropics than outside the region, including 57% of plants, 34% of amphibians, 12% of birds, 20% of reptiles, and 23% of mammals. Deforestation and other land use changes, pollution, and hunting and poaching, combined with the impacts of climate change, contribute to complex patterns of ongoing stress. We may have already lost species that we didn't even know existed. It's not just the people and communities of the tropics who are driving these impacts on tropical ecosystems. In fact, many pressures are imposed from outside the region. Demand for commodities such as palm oil, cocoa, timber, soy, and paper from Europe, North America, and China contribute to deforestation, land degradation, and habitat loss in the tropics. A greater proportion of land area is already considered degraded in the tropics, and this ongoing and growing demand from commodities is putting further ecosystems at risk. Analysis from 2014 suggests that almost 50% of all recent tropical deforestation is due to illegal clearing for commercial agriculture. Between 2011 and 2015, the land area footprint of forestry and related agricultural products such as palm oil, cocoa, and soy imported by the United Kingdom alone was 13.6 million hectares, more than half the size of the UK. It is estimated that at least 40% of this footprint is in countries with weak governance, poor labour standards, and high risk of deforestation. For example, nearly 2/3 of UK palm oil imports are from high-risk regions in Indonesia and Malaysia. 70% of soy imports come from South America, where illegal land clearing for agriculture is common. However, even here there is progress. Demand from consumers for more sustainable products means that nations such as the UK are working towards more sustainable supply chains, land regeneration, and improved working conditions through international agreements. For example, illegal clearing for cocoa has declined in Côte d'Ivoire in recent years due to certification schemes developed in partnership with the UK. Emerging markets such as Papua New Guinea, where forestry products and other commodities are a rapidly growing export industry, provide opportunities for both PNG and export destination countries to develop sustainable harvest methods and markets while improving livelihood outcomes.
Understanding the tropics is essential to understanding the trajectory of the world. The work we do through the State of the Tropics project and at James Cook University aims to shine a light on the world's tropics. I wish you all the very best for what I'm sure will be a very successful and stimulating conference. Once again, I'm very sorry I can't be with you. Thank you and goodbye.